まあそうですね。ライブ中です。
さあ、配信始まりましたか？あれ、もうオンラインでも見てる人います？
今ね、オンラインは19人いらっしゃいますね。
まあ、これから増えていくと思いますので、少しだけ話を伝えましょうか。
そうですね、少しつないでください。
はい。それじゃあ、JJUGナイトセミナー2022年最後のJJUGナイトセミナー、12月の。
そうだね。
はい。ナイトセミナーを始めたいと思います。今日はいつものオラクルさんじゃなくて、いつもはないんですけど、前回のオラクルさんではなく、レッドハットさんに来ておりまして、クワーカスワールドツアーのなんか一環としてやってもらいただきますと、それと JJUG のナイトセミナーのコラボでやっております。で、セッション内容ですが、2つ今日はありまして、1つ目が生徒さんからなぜ Kubernetes なのか。クワーカスの話なのになぜ Kubernetes なんでしょうか。そんな話もあるんでしょうね。タイトルにそう書いてあるんで、はい、話してくれるでしょう。そして、2つ目がダニエル・オーさんによる Zero to Hero in Kubernetes Native Java with Quarkus です。今日はね、若干外雨降ってて、ちょっと湿り気があるんですけど、クワーカスの勢いで乾かすといいかなと思っております。今ね、オンラインの人はちょっと浸透したかもしれないですけど、今、オフライン会場のどっかん。オフライン会場も英語でお願いします。英語じゃジョークにならないからね。はい。そんなクールなジョークも決まったところで、
ひどい。寒い方のクールな。
たいと思います。じゃあ、瀬戸さん、この空気の中ですが。
なぜか急に調子悪くなりました。
じゃあ、もうちょいつなぎなさい。
これ以上どう恥ずかしめを受けてつなげばいいですか。
瀬戸さんは Kubernetes とか触ったことありますか？
Kubernetes は
ある。
クワーカスはゲットスターティッドを触ったぐらいですね。ただ最近スプリングに感じてるが、スプリングブートをずっともちろん使ってますけど、使っててももうコアの部分しか使わないようにしてきて、スプリングクラウドとかを使わなくなってきて、ウェブアプリケーション作れれば何でもいいかなと思うようになってきたので、そうするとフレームワークを選ばないし、で特にGraalVM のネイティブ対応みたいなものを考えたときに、スプリングだとちょっとめんどくさいことも多いなと感じることもあるので、スプリングブート3、スプリング6になってもやっぱりそこはめんどくさいと思うので、そこはクワーカスだったら楽だと嬉しいなとは思って、そういうふうに注目はしています。
ごめんなさい、全然できない。
ありがとうございます。じゃあもうちょいつなぐと、今すごくシールを用意してくれててですね。こんな、見て。会場にはシールが、ステッカーが用意されてます。ちょっとそのデュークをここに。
Especially the brand new ones, slash.
Yes.
かわいい。
Guns and Roses.
ティーパットは大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫よ。とか、いろいろ用意してくださってます。あと、なぜかオープンシフトの本がもらえるっていう感じになってます。
本がもらえる。
そう、本がもらえる。
準備できました。
ありがとうございます。
準備できたようなので、さんに変わりたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。
じゃあ、画面入れます。
ありがとうございます。変わります。すいません、ちょっと機器の故障により、ちゃんと画面共有ができていませんでした。でも私の方からは、今回のクワーカスのイベントなんですけれども、クワーカスがKubernetesをベース上で動くことを考えて作られたフレームワークですので、なぜKubernetesなのかというので発表させていただきます。で、もう知っている方からすれば、もう今更感がある話題なんですけれども、常に新しい人が来てますので、新しい人向けの前提条件の説明だと思っていただければと思います。で、私なんですけど、瀬戸聡といいまして、今年からレッドハットに所属しておりまして、JBossAP とかクワーカスなどを担当しています。で、日本 Java ユーザーグループの感じもやっています。で、クラウドって便利ですよねっていうのがありまして、出てこなくなった。出てきた。っていうのがありまして、クラウドをなぜ便利に感じるかっていうと、ボタン一つでいいクラウド構築、リソースのテンプレート化による これってどういうふうに配信されてるんですかね。
画面が見えてますよ。
見えてますか。すごい不安定な感じになってる。
オンライン側はすごく安定してます。安定してないのここだけですね。
なるほど。大変失礼しました。じゃあ気にせず、リソースのテンプレート化による繰り返し作業の省力化、API による操作の自動化、必要な時に必要な分だけリソースを準備できる。で、リソースの拡張に対する柔軟性というのがあります。で、その中で気になることがあって、クラウドベンダーロックインというのがあって、特定のクラウド固有の機能に過度に依存してしまい、他のクラウドやオンプレに移行ができなくなる。クラウドベンダーによる一方的な値上げや SLA の低下に対して無防備になるということが考えられます。で、実際に今でも特定の製品に対して過度に依存してしまって、度重なる値上げとかで困ってるっていう例とかはよく聞きます。で、なんでそういう話をするかっていうと、Java インサーバーっていうのは大体ベンダーロックインを意識して実装されていました。で、複数のベンダー用共通の仕様策定で、仕様の範囲内で使う場合は互換性があるということをあります。で、なぜ Kubernetes が注目されるかなんですけれども、複数のクラウドベンダー間でインフラの管理の共通化ができる。で、オンプレで実行することで、クラウドの便利さをオンプレの方でも使えますよっていうのがあります。で、OSS として管理、複数のベンダーによるサポートがあって、もうベンダーロックインの危険性が低減できるというのがあります。で、実際にどういうことができるかっていうと、インフラレイヤーの仮想化レイヤーを提供して、オンプレだろうがクラウドだろうが、ほぼ同じ感覚で動かせるようになります。で、仮想マシンよりもサイズの小さいコンテナという単位でマシンを提供してくれます。で、API による操作の自動化、テキストベースのコンテナイメージのテンプレート化、コンテナイメージの一時保存による複製等、その他もろもろで、Kubernetes を使うことでベンダーロックインを回避しつつ、クラウドの便利さをどこでも享受できますということで、Kubernetes が注目されているという話でした。で、それを前提としまして、次のセッションでは Kubernetes を利用しながら Java の開発をどのように進めていくのかっていうのをライブコーディングでダニエル・オーさんが説明してくださいます。ということで、ありがとうございました。ですみません、ここでこの後懇親会に行くつもりなんですけれども、懇親会に来てくれる人ってどれくらいいますか？手を挙げてください。1、2、3、います？すみません、懇親会に行かれる方、手を挙げてください。懇親会はレッドハット？一応レッドハットがお金出す予定です。
こういう仕様、
マジで。一応、ご遠慮。じゃあ、行く、行かない、行かない、行かない、行かない、行く、行く、行く。了解です。ありがとうございます。では、第2部さん、よろしくお願いします。
Hello, is it working?
No, not working.
Not working.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, so we are from the United States, and then we are Red Hatter, and then we are working for Red Hat, specialized in cloud native runtimes like Quarkus and a bunch of the other stuff, runtimes.
Yeah, thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm James Faulkner, based in Orlando, Florida, home of Mickey Mouse, hurricanes, and cloud native Java. So thank you for having me here. This is my 4th time in Japan, 3rd time in Tokyo. And I look forward to explaining some more about Quarkus How many of you have heard of Quarkus? Yes, several. I think it's been presented before, so I'm going to skip the introduction and talk more about roadmap and new features coming in Quarkus 3 later, early in 2023. So, and Daniel O is then going to give you quite a bit of demonstration to show you exactly how it works. Yeah, there's my picture from probably 10 years ago. More hair, less kilos. But yeah, you can see our Twitter handle if you want to follow us. I'm technical products marketing. Daniel here is developer advocate on my team. And so we focus on Quarkus, JBoss, Node.js, Vertex, many other runtimes that Red Hat makes available for its customers. So, without further ado, let's start talking about Quarkus. As I see many of you know what Quarkus is, I won't spend too much time here. It's our next generation Java. So for customers who, existing Java customers, JBoss customers, WebLogic, WebSphere, it gives them a path forward and gives them a kind of a next generation Java framework that's more compatible with the cloud and with containers and Kubernetes. And it really helps in developer productivity as well. Many features that Daniel will show you make Quarkus a fantastic option, even for customers who are familiar with Spring and Spring Boot. There's a new version of Spring out and a new version of Spring Boot coming soon. And Quarkus, we believe, is competitive with that solution. And so we try as hard as we can to make Quarkus as great and a joy, as much of a joy to work with as possible. So just really briefly, one of the magic pieces of Quarkus is how it does its build and deployment. So traditional runtime like Spring Boot, everything that happens in a traditional Java application happens at runtime when you start the application. So that takes a lot of time and a lot of memory. Quarkus eliminates that by moving it all away from runtime and into the build time. You can see Quarkus does all of the class path scanning and annotation processing, file system scanning, meta model generation inside of the memory, and then it packages that up so that at runtime it starts up really, really fast. Next slide, you can see some of the numbers here. Again, just to briefly show you, it's orders of magnitude faster. Orders of magnitude better memory performance. So traditional Java RESTful application takes 136 megabytes, Quarkus takes 12. Traditional startup time is like 4 seconds, Quarkus is 16 milliseconds. So on the order, thousands of times faster. So lots of benefit for using Quarkus, and it's still Java. You still are writing Java code, so as a Java developer, it's going to be extremely familiar. Quarkus also uses most of the traditional frameworks that you're probably familiar with, like Hibernate or Netty, or any of the metrics and telemetry libraries. So you can continue to use those, but you get the benefit of very, very fast, very high performance Java framework. Next slide. So here's the Quarkus roadmap. So we're currently in Q4 of 2022. So we just had a release of Quarkus version 2.14, and that has a number of new capabilities like support for web services or SOAP client support through a project called Camel. It also defaults to REST Easy Reactive, so a very high performance RESTful engine for your applications. Many people use Quarkus to write microservices, and those microservices have RESTful endpoints, and so the more performance we can have there, the better. So lots of other interesting things that happened with that version 2.14. That version is going to be productized by Red Hat and made available to customers in the end of this quarter, so probably in about 2 weeks. And that's going to be our first LTS release. So many of our customers are concerned about how fast Quarkus moves. This next release is going to be an LTS release, meaning 3 years of support. It's not as fast, or it's not as slow as something like JBoss, but JBoss is more of an established and mature product. Quarkus still moves quicker. So 3 years is the time frame that we felt gives our customers enough freedom to kind of plan for future upgrades with a 3-year lifespan. So that new release will be in about 2 weeks at the end of December. And then the next release, which is what I'm going to talk about for the next few slides before I give it over to Daniel, is Quarkus 3. Actually, can you go back? So the 3.0 upstream release will happen in January, and the Red Hat productized version, codenamed Ghostbusters, will happen in right now we're shooting for February 2023. So this is going to bring a number of new benefits, a number of new features, also a long-term support plan for Quarkus 3 as well. So Quarkus, as it's getting to be, 2 years old now? It's getting to be a little bit more mature, so our customers are starting to rely on it more and more in production. We have a number of customers running Quarkus applications. We have lots of customer stories and success case studies across the globe, but those customers feel comfortable running Quarkus in production now, and so we want to make sure and give them that longer-term supported offering for those for the new release. So Quarkus 3 is just one example of that longer-term release, and it'll have many features. So if you move to the next slide, Daniel. So as I said, it's targeting February 2023, and I have 3 slides for this before I hand it over to Daniel. The first slide is what's good about Quarkus 3. Well, the first thing is there's a new release of Jakarta EE, which is Jakarta EE 10, that was released back in September. Jakarta EE 10 is the traditional, full stack Java Enterprise Edition, Java EE, now called Jakarta EE. It's something that we've tried to keep Quarkus away from. We don't want Quarkus to slow down to the point where it's, one release every 4 years. But at the same time, Jakarta EE 10 has a new, what's called core profile. It's a very, very small subset of specifications in Jakarta EE 10 that we feel that Quarkus can easily implement, because it already does implement several of the specifications like CDI and JAX-RS and several others. And so Quarkus 3 will have support for the Jakarta EE 10 core profile. It's not going to be certified, it's just going to have support for all of the same APIs that Jakarta EE 10 core profile. It's never going to support the full profile, like all of Jakarta EE will never be implemented in Quarkus, but core profile support's pretty easy. MicroProfile 6 is out or will be out soon with a number of new capabilities in the areas you see listed here. New metrics and telemetry implementations based on OpenTelemetry, which Daniel and I talked about at the OSS summit earlier today. There's also new capabilities in the JWT or JSON Web Token validation library, as well as improvements to OpenAPI. So that will be supported. So Quarkus will support full MicroProfile 6 in Quarkus 3. So getting to the more interesting things in Quarkus 3, we are adding support for what's called virtual threads. So have any of you done reactive programming, like with reactive streams or reactive APIs, non-blocking asynchronous code? You'll appreciate this new project in Java called Loom, which provides for high performance reactive style application, but you don't have to write the reactive code. You can write a traditional same code you've been writing for decades, but you're going to get massive performance benefit in terms of high concurrency and less memory requirements through that project. It's called virtual threads. It's a way to do very, very lightweight threading on top of the operating system, and you can get pretty high concurrency without having to have multiple threads. There's also new support for gRPC, a new server. If you're building gRPC applications, there's a new implementation in Quarkus 3, which is much more performant. We also support Hibernate ORM, the object requests or object relational mapping library, very popular in the Quarkus world. Hibernate 6 brings a number of new capabilities and also much better performance. As I mentioned, the extended lifecycle is really cool. So this 3-year lifecycle. I know we have many Japanese customers that need a longer term lifecycle because they cannot re-upgrade every 6 months, right? You've got to have a longer lifecycle. So we're pushing Quarkus out to as far as we can go at the moment, and as Quarkus matures more and more, I can imagine there'll be longer term releases in the future. We also have support for CNCF build packs. So this is a way to build and package applications for Kubernetes. It's very popular. OpenShift has had, S2I support. We now have Helm chart support in OpenShift, and so with Quarkus 3, we want to add build pack support so that you can build your Quarkus packages using that standardized and very popular format. There's a link at the bottom of these slides, by the way, to a blog post that kind of gives a little bit more detail on each of these. Okay, last slide for Quarkus 3. Some of the new things coming is support for HTTP 3. So HTTP, as you all know, is the hypertext transfer protocol. It's been around since the beginning of the web. There was HTTP 1, which suffered from a number of problems in terms of performance. As we started to build, lots of JavaScript, lots of CSS, lots of HTML, these browsers started to have to download hundreds of files for one website. And so HTTP 1 and 2 had issues with that in terms of how fast they could download things from the web. So HTTP 3 solves a very important problem in the world of web protocols, which is called the head-of-line blocking problem, where if one file stops downloading, it can block many other files from finishing, which makes your website slow. So HTTP 3 uses this, it's called QUIC, Q-U-I-C, which is quick UDP internet connection. So HTTP 1 and HTTP 2, they both used TCP. HTTP 3 uses UDP in a very interesting way to solve some of the performance problems. And so that's coming, support for that in Quarkus. So if you're building a Quarkus application, you can expose an HTTP 3 endpoint, or you can download using HTTP 3 protocol. And it's extremely fast for multiple, when you're downloading many, many files. Another really interesting thing in Quarkus 3 is support for this IOU ring. I know that's kind of a weird keyword, but it's effectively a new API in the Linux kernel that gives userland programs, user space programs like web servers and Quarkus applications, direct memory access, very, very limited memory access, but very direct memory access for doing I/O. So if you're streaming a file from disk, it allows you to stream it much faster because there's no context switching when you go from user space to kernel space. But that also applies to network connections. So you can, when you're streaming, Netflix movies or TikTok videos, you can stream extremely fast with this new capability with IOU ring, which is, as I said, it's a new kernel interface that Quarkus uses underneath. So Quarkus actually is based on the Netty project. And Netty exposes and accesses this new interface very quickly, and Netty 4 and Netty 5. So you'll see this in Quarkus 3, and it'll really have amazing performance in terms of network streaming. Another new thing in Quarkus 3 is moving from reactive streams to java.util.concurrent.flow. This is an API in Java that's been there since Java 9, so many, many years. We're finally moving Quarkus applications to it. If you have written a Quarkus application using reactive streams, we have adapters that you can use so that you don't have to rewrite your applications, but you can take advantage of the new APIs in the Java package. There's also a new dev UI. So for developers who are building Quarkus applications, you can start up this web UI and give developer-friendly access to things like visualizing Kafka streams. So if you're using Kafka, you can now, through the dev UI, see the contents of your topics, and you can configure your Kafka access. So that's just one example. There are hundreds of different things that developers can do on this dev UI, and it makes it very very much a joy to develop a Quarkus app, in addition to all of the live coding and continuous testing that Daniel is going to demonstrate later on. And then lastly, migration tooling. So one question we're getting more is, I have an existing JBossy AP application or WebLogic application, and I want to move to Quarkus. How do I do that? And our answer, to date has been, Quarkus is not designed for large Java monoliths, and so you're going to have to rewrite everything. Well, it's not entirely true. There are many APIs that are similar between microservices and monoliths, and so with this new migration tooling, we'll be able to analyze your source code of your monolith, your WebLogic, your WebSphere app, and show you how you can migrate to Quarkus, so you can gain the benefits of all of the wonderful things that Quarkus has that Daniel's going to show. So that's it for Quarkus 3 new features. I'm going to pass it over to Daniel to continue our journey and show you a lot more about Quarkus in terms of actual hands-on coding and how it works. So Daniel,
Thank you so
I'm going
much.
to attach that to your...
Okay, I'm gonna attach it. Okay. Alrighty. Thanks so much, James. Okay, so here's one slide I just prepared today. So I'm gonna make sure everybody to become the superhero in Kubernetes and Java application today. So as you can see, there are a bunch of stuff in the illustration in this one slide page. You can get started Quarkus application development, and then you will end up with some becoming superhero with a Kubernetes named Java application. So everybody doing is a Kubernetes today, and then you could deploy any kind of application, Java, .NET, Python, Go, and then Node.js in deploy to Kubernetes. But you cannot say your application is natively a Kubernetes native application, because Kubernetes provides some bunch of the feature, for example, service discovery and resiliency and scalability and a lot of stuff. The previously back then, Netflix OSS and then a Spring Boot, they actually handle that kind of capability on your application, like a class level or method level. And now you're going to deploy that application into Kubernetes. You could still maintain that kind of feature on your Java method. However, why don't you just delegate that kind of capability to Kubernetes rather than implementation on your Java application? So that's not going to say my application Kubernetes native Java, as long as you could keep maintaining that feature on top of your Java application. So for example, Kubernetes provide the external logic configuration based on Kubernetes config map, which allows you have like a configuration into your application. For example, like some of the like a field name or some of the configuration. So previously, you need to set up that configuration on your application properly or YAML file or into database. And then when you deploy application as a container on top of the Kubernetes, how to handle that? Yeah, that's not flexible way, because whenever your application could be restored or scale out to a different cluster, maybe you cannot guarantee that configuration always working. So that's the reason why Kubernetes provides the config map, externalize your configuration from your application code into Kubernetes resources. So whenever your application path scale out and in, or even restart based on health check, so Kubernetes automatically attach your configuration into your application path. And what about the sensitive information like a password or API token, some stuff? Maybe previously in traditional way, you can actually encoding or encrypt your sensitive information and then attach your Java code or your application. However, Kubernetes provides a secret, which makes it it's pretty much easier to attach or detach your secret information into your application. So as long as you keep using more Kubernetes features into your application, that makes your application more like a Kubernetes native way. So today I'm going to be more focused on the Java application, and then what will be challenging for Java developer. Okay, I really want to use my Kubernetes stuff, but the problem is, what is the best way? What is the best practice to incorporate your Kubernetes feature into my Java application? So I'm gonna just get right into my demo here. So maybe I'm gonna just sit in the chair. That'd be great. Okay. So this is my terminal window. This is an empty project. So I'm gonna create a new project using Quarkus CLI and create the Kubernetes Java. You can use the Maven command line or Gradle. So Quarkus CLI command line, so which I prefer to use that because Quarkus CLI provides a bunch of like a convenient feature. For example, you don't need to remember all kind of the argument or some of the option into Maven command line or Gradle module. It automatically provides some kind of feature auto completion, which is really cool. And then it's automatically generates a bunch of the like a Java command line wrapper, and then Maven wrapper, and then some configuration. In case you want to deploy this application to Kubernetes, and the Docker file automatically generate as well in the sample application. So maybe if you already know the Quarkus, so maybe you can go to quarkus.io, and then there is a code to generate like a star query, which is very similar to Spring.
There's also the ja.quarkus.io.
JJUG.
JA. Go back to the main page.
Yep.
And then pull the little globe, the right, no, the top.
Top here.
All right, the globe. Change to Japanese.
Oh yeah. That's one really cool thing. Yeah. So this is all kind of documentation based on Japanese, and so it's pretty much easier to understand that. And then to go to the Quarkus.io, the code.quarkus.io is some kind of project generator. You can select more than 500 extensions, such as maybe dependency, some kind of capability. You want to develop a reactive application or like RESTful API or database transaction or messaging processing and a bunch of the Kubernetes or even public cloud deployment like Amazon Lambda or like a Google and then Azure function, etc. So you can use the Maven command line as well or Gradle to generate your project. So today I'm going to keep using Quarkus CLI here. I just create one, and I'm going to open my Quarkus project. And also, the first thing I'm going to run the Quarkus dev is the Quarkus development mode, which allows me to run the Quarkus application as a local environment. And then you can see the Quarkus running on is the where is the version here? Yeah, here we go. It's so 2.14.2 is the latest version. And then when you press, you can actually provide the James mentioned earlier, the dev UI. And then when you press W, it's automatically go to the landing page. And then you can go to like the RESTful API. And then you can see the hello world message. And then here's the dev UI. It's provide the graphical interface to understand what kind of extension and capability you already have on local environment. So for example, here just extension automatically pull down by default into Quarkus application. And one interesting is here the build step. So what happens inside the Quarkus when you run the application? So most developers maybe don't care about what happening in the JVM level, but this is a really good thing for developers to understand what's happening behind the scene, and then they will figure out how Quarkus will make it faster and smaller than the other like Java traditional framework. You could actually see that all kind of stuff. The James explained, so Quarkus shift all kind of stuff from runtime phase to build time. This is actually happening. You can see a lot of stuff here. And then when I go back to my terminal window, I switch here, and then this is my application. So testing application. Here is the greeting resource you can see here. So just sample application, hello from REST easy. That's why we can see the web browser. you can actually same thing using the hello, and then you got some hello from message reactive. And then one of the good things is Quarkus is not only Kubernetes native Java app dev, but also the fundamental feature to increase developer productivity in the end. So when you press R, we're back to the WI. So when you press R, it automatically starts continual testing. So a lot of developer team really want to have test-driven development, like a TDD, AKA. But in reality, I went through like a software engineer for more than 10 years and back then. But so test-driven development is a totally pain in the ass because you spend a lot of time to develop business services rather than testing. And then you can go through like a unit test by yourself, but you don't have enough time to edit a test case all the time. So that's why a lot of people just skip it. Okay, I'm pretty sure my application is totally working. And then when you push that code, and sometimes you got some error in production environment. And then because when you push the code is automatically deployed to production environment in the next 3 minutes with your fantastic CI/CD pipeline. So in order to avoid that kind of problem, what should we do? If you could have like a continuous testing capability, like a out-of-box feature on your Java framework, which is super cool because you don't need to edit some kind of third-party tool or some other stuff because it's automatically there. So I just press R here so you can see the one test passing, and then go to MUI, and then it opens the UI here, and then with on UI you can see the test case is starting, and then it's just passed. And then when you go to the application and under the test directory, I have only one test case here, automatically generated at the very beginning. So here's the hello, and the rest is here. So let's try to change my application just in case. The one of the great feature and the beauty of the Quarkus provide the live coding capability, just like a Node.js. So in Java world back there, you need to recompile, review your application, and restart like some Tomcat server and the redeploy stuff whenever you change the code. That's the known practice in Java world. However, the Quarkus things change a lot. So it's a Quarkus make you keep focusing application development, and then we got rid of that kind of inevitable process in the end. So let's go to here, and then let me try to change here, like a hello, like a JJUG, and I just save a file, and then back to the application. And now we're going to see that, oh, I got some error because the expected result here, hello from message reactive, but your actual return RESTful API, hello job. However, when I just invoke RESTful API, I got a new return code, the hello job. So this is one of a good example, but pretty simple, not reality cases. But so sometimes developer, okay, I just verify my application functionality, just like a hello JJUG, it's totally working. However, you failed the test case. Sometimes the test case occur some of the production error. So, but in the meantime, I never ever tried to rebuild, recompile my application, and I never ever tried to restart my application. It automatically detects my test case fail, and then I actually got the new result. So this is a literally live coding capability, and the continuous testing is just an out-of-the-box feature into on top of the Quarkus. And then fix the problem, and then you could actually go to WI, you can find the same thing here, the same error here. So if you prefer to use GUI, like a graphical user interface, you can go to WI. Or you can, if you prefer to use a terminal window, and then you can go here into Quarkus, like a terminal window stuff. And then I'm going to go back to my application, and then let's try to fix the problem here. Here we go. I'm going to check the JJUG and the same file, and back to the terminal. And now you can see the just green color means you pass, and then go back to terminal window and WI. You can see the same result. But sometimes some people develop, when I try to showcase this kind of great feature, and some developer ask me, hey, Dad, you just change one single word on your method, and then is it still working if I change the whole method or create a new one, even new class it? Is it still working live coding or the continuous still working? I will say, yeah, sure. So let me show that kind of stuff in the reality. So I'm going to add a new test case, just like a test-driven development practice. I'm going to create a new test case here, something like the, I'm going to say like a test greeting, and the new endpoint here is greeting, and then let's say hello, and Quarkus, word tour, stop here. And then what about the like some kind of my name is there. Okay, I just save file and back to the terminal, and then you can see automatically the new errors just find out. So for error, which means I just added a new test case, but there's no actual method on my application, so no match. That's why for error, just find out. And then let's try to add new RESTful API here to match it to our test case here. And I'm going to new method greeting, and then to pass greeting, and then hello, and then what is that kind of thing? And the Quarkus word tour here. And I'm not gonna add some like a static content here. It's pretty much work. I'm gonna read that name from my configuration file, like from local file. So let's say like a name, and then I'm gonna define configure property based on name, which is name from like a name. I just save a file, and then back to the terminal, and then you can see I got some new error here. So here is some kind of name. We cannot find the name from the configuration. So this means the Quarkus framework automatically detect or aware what happened in your Java code. And then I'm going to go back to here, the resources. Here is application property, and then there's a name, and then I just save a file, and back to here, two use cases, the test cases succeed. And then back to WR, just in case you prefer to use the graph UI, I'm going to pass to use case here. And then let's try to verify my application here, like a greeting. And now you can see hello Quarkus words to a stop. My name is Dan. So in the meantime, I just create a new test case in the Java method. And also I create a new Java method in my actual RESTful API application for the resources. And then in the meantime, I just keep finding out some error based on continuous testing as well as live coding. I only spend my time to focus on application development rather than the other non-functional capability like a build, compile, restart, some stuff. This capability increase your developer productivity and reduce your time to spend a lot of time to develop application. And one of the interesting stuff here, back to WI, and then here is the configure editor. Now you can see, I'm going to change my full name, Daniel. I just save a file, and then back to the terminal, and then I'm going to try revoke, and then here is my, even if I change my configuration value on my WI, and now you can see the new Daniel and what happened. When you go back to my application, you can see project, it actually changed my local file system. However, I just missed the test case here. I got some error here. Oh, we expect Dan rather than Daniel. So it's keep working. Whenever changing your some value in WI, it actually changes your local file system. However, continuous testing feature keep detecting your failure, which is evidence that continuous testing is still working. So I'm going to fix the problem here. Back to my project. And you go to here, and then here change that, and then go to here. So we all green right now. And one of the interesting that James mentioned earlier, the Quarkus actually born as reactive programming. However, you don't need to worry about how to develop reactive programming. So in the Spring world, you need to rewrite all Spring Boot application into reactive, like Spring React. Sometimes you need to integrate Spring integration ecosystem or Spring Cloud integration, Spring Cloud ecosystem as well, using the Spring function stuff. And it's totally different thing to use Spring reactive stuff. And Quarkus is pretty much easier because Quarkus provide reactive function and reactive capability with the relevant annotation. So one of the interesting here, so Quarkus relatively easy reactive thing. And here is so it automatically measure your potential performance issue for reactive programming. There are three pillars: execution, resources, and writer. How to use and how to implement your reactive application like a method level. You need to write in the proper way, and then you need to consume the resources and how to execute that kind of thing. So Quarkus perspective, so Quarkus automatically understand based on your return type. When you go back to application, and here you can see the return type is a string. So when you define like a uni or multi, it's a similar concept in the Spring Reactive, like a model and flux. So uni and a multi is explicitly define your application is a reactive program. And then, but I just set it up like a string. It's not reactive way, like a more like imperative way. That's why Quarkus find out your method RESTful is still working. However, if you run this RESTful API with a reactive way in your production with scalability, maybe you got some performance issue in the end. This is a very simple application on my local, but this is a really good stuff to Quarkus provide like some potential issue or performance issue. So in order to fix that problem, maybe I'm gonna set it up like a non-blocking annotation with that method, and then back to the application, and I'm gonna reload that and just solve the problem because I'm gonna make this a non-blocking. Make sure even if it returns string type, but this method treated by non-blocking IO, just like a reactive way. So this is one of the good stuff to Quarkus thing. And then now I'm going to add a bunch of more reality use case. For example, the curl, like a data transaction, into my application. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this application to Kubernetes, and then make sure my application working on my local, and then as well as working on Kubernetes as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to back to terminal window, and then so I'm going to add extension like a bunch of the extension like a JDBC. I'm going to need to okay. So let me try to showcase another thing. Back to the application. Okay. I need to delete it. Where is that? Flush. For SQL. And here's a Jackson. Okay. So back to the terminal. And I'm going to stop my dev mode. And then now I'm going to try to package my application like a Java file. And then like a Quarkus build. I'm going to the skill unit test. I'm already verified my application, the test case on my continuous testing. And then here is the active monitor. And I have running a bunch of the Java here. I'm going to highlight here, and then I'm going to run Java, and then application, and then runner. And then you can see here we go. It's just 0.4 seconds to start up. If you start maybe a couple more times, it's pretty much faster. The first time is to take some time. This is the reason why Quarkus is pretty much faster than any other Java framework, including Spring Boot. In less than 1 second. So it's really fast, even if I didn't use name compilation. So for a second, then when I go to terminal window, and then here is you can see, so 104 megabyte your memory footprint. Okay, so pretty small. And then when you call, here we go, and then my application is still working. And back to the active monitor is slightly like increased to 104 to 108. It's like a 4 megabyte, just a little bit increase for consuming your application. Then let me try to one more time to build this application with the native comparison. That's exactly the James mentioned earlier. The Quarkus enable Java developed packaging application, not only Java, like a Java file, but also native executable. So this make your application just executable file without JVM, just like a exe file in Windows operating systems. So it's just running on right away. It's pretty much faster. But I'm not gonna say you're gonna always do native comparison. It depends on what kind of workload you are deploying application to Kubernetes, for example, serverless, or like an event-driven application, and or maybe scalability. So for example, you need to deploy application to Kubernetes more than like 100 pod or 100,000 pod. And then small memory footprint and fast startup time will make you super fast. Okay. And then when you go to target territory, now you can see here executable file, the 40 megabyte, which is like almost 50% less file size in Spring native the imaging. And then I'm gonna just run that file without Java command line. Here we go. And then you can see, here we go. It's a 28 milliseconds. And maybe I'm gonna try to one more time. And then you can see, so 19 milliseconds. So previously we almost like a half a second, like a 400 milliseconds, and now it's 20 milliseconds. It's more like a 20 times fast startup time. So which is cool. So just an example, when you deploy the Java application to serverless, a lot of people prefer to use Node.js like a JavaScript and Go rather than Java because they thought Java is pretty old and heavyweight to start up time, including cold start strategy. It takes more like a 5 seconds or 6 seconds to start up. And then Quarkus actually solved that challenge with the native comparison. So it takes like less than 20 milliseconds. It just happens instantly. And then when I go back to the memory footprint, and now you can see here 11 megabyte. So previously we have 108. It's a 10 times smaller memory footprint as well. 20 times faster than startup time and 10 times less than memory footprint. And when I go back to terminal and then try to invoke the same URL, my application totally working. And even if one invocation and then it's like a 1 megabyte that increase the memory footprint. So that's why if you're thinking about the serverless application and you want to keep using your Java technology, so Quarkus with the native comparison should be your solution and answer to overcome your challenge on the serverless platform. So with this, I want to quick showcase here, and let me try to run my container environment, and then I'm going to add. So I'm going to add like CRUD capability like a JDB's PostSQL, and then Hibernate or Panache. And then the Panache is some kind of augment your data transaction capability. For example, the Hibernate ORM the database mapping. So you can connect to your Java beans and then the database schema and the field table, something like that. And then Panache allows developer to skip or avoid the fundamental operation thing like restore all data or get a setter, this kind of stuff. It's necessary, but it's a boring job. And then this Panache just get rid of the kind of fundamental thing. I'm going to show real quick. And the rest is Jackson. It's kind of produce and then consume your JSON format data. So I'm gonna run the Quarkus dev once again. And then here's I'm gonna show a really interesting part. So it automatically detects, oh yeah, you're actually using the reactive stuff, but you just edited the imperative thing. So don't worry, I'm gonna just go back to my application. And then I'm gonna change that to imperative thing. And save a file, and restart automatically. And as you can see, so some Docker container image automatically pulled down my local. And then when you run the application, and you can see the dev service automatically start like a container. And you can actually using Docker command line here. Now you can see PostSQL and test container automatically stand up. So when you develop crawl the application to connect to database, so there are several ways to stand up your database. Maybe you can connect to external database, or you can install like a database itself on your laptop or desktop. Or you can pull down container image and you just run. You can Docker pull, Docker run. But in order to that, you need to find out like a Docker file or like a installation guide to set up your database stuff. What if you needed to use multiple databases like a PostSQL, MariaDB, and MongoDB, and a bunch of the other stuff like Oracle database as well? So Quarkus actually provided dev services which allows developers to stand up automatically like a relevant technology as long as you edit a relevant dev services extension. For example, when I go to my project, and then I already edited JDB's PostSQL, which means when I edited the JDB's PostSQL extension in the Quarkus project, and then as long as you run container environment like a Podman, Docker, so Quarkus automatically stand up your container image for your application development. And then when you go back to Dev UI and you click on Dev Services, now you can see all relevant configuration automatically set it up. I don't even need to add like a password and then like a JDBC URL to connect to the database inside the container. So which is a cool feature because a lot of developers have some like a challenge to set up your database, but they want to more focus on developing application itself rather than setting up the like a database or messaging server or some of the data cache stuff. Because when I go back to my application and then application property, there's no database configuration here. So Quarkus automatically set it up. And then I'm going to add some bunch of the class. For example, let's say like here's a person Java file. And then I'm going to make this Java class as an entity. You can actually set it up like a cacheable. I'm going to extend Panache entity. And then I'm going to add a string name. And then one of the other is the location. That's the thing. When I go to Panache entity, it actually extends Panache entity base. It actually a bunch of the like a fundamental operational method like a create and then delete and then retrieve all data and all the data setter into Java beans. So that's why I don't need to add the other kind of stuff. This is one of the actively recorded pattern in the Quarkus provide based on Hibernate, Water, and Panache, but you can still using like a repository pattern like a DTO, DAO stuff like normally you are doing like a Spring Boot application. And then I'm going to go back to my resources, and then I don't need to the number of being like reactive programming anymore. And then I'm going to create a new method here. For example, let's say the endpoint like a person. I'm going to return the list type in the person object, and let's say list all, and then person and list all. That's all. So pretty simple. I just implement one method to restore all data from PostSQL database. And then let's try to add one more here. So for example, I just need to retrieve some specific data with some ID, like a database ID. Let's say the pass here as ID, and I want to return one person data. And then let's say the method like a find by ID, and then pass param. It says the same thing, like a cast mapping in Spring Boot, and ID, and then long ID, and then I'm gonna return some predefined in the Panache class and find by ID. That's the thing. So I just implement two Java method here to retrieve all data, and the other one is just retrieve one specific data based on the ID. And then I'm going to add some import SQL file. Let's say insert into person values, and then I'm going to use the Hibernate ORM sequence. Hibernate sequence here, and then so name is my name 10. I'm from Boston. Here I'm going to add a few more data here. So here's my James. Here's Orlando, NCO, and then the subject. Let's say like San Francisco. Okay, I just say file. So finger crossed, and then let's try to access the endpoint. Like 8080, and then hello and person. Okay, so the rest of the matter. 8080.
Text plain instead of.
Oh yeah, gotcha. So I need to change it to JSON format here. JSON here. Here we go. JSON. Okay, so file. Let's try to here. So now I have three data from actually my PostSQL database, and Daniel from Boston. So if you're going to go to like the ID2, it's James from like Orlando. So which is pretty cool. So during the data transition, one of the most popular use cases to develop business application in the production using database, I don't even need to try to set up the database stuff, because the only thing I just did is added the JDBC PostSQL Maven dependency on my Java project. And I just created a couple of Java class and a method, pretty easy. I don't need, when you go back to my Java entity class here, you can see just like a 15 line of code, pretty simple. And my application is a bunch of stuff. And then, so let me try to deploy this application to Kubernetes. So back to the application, and then here is my developer sandbox, which is one of the Red Hat developer program. So when you go to developers at redhat.com here, developers at redhat.com, and there are actually provide developer sandbox. It provide free Kubernetes cluster for 30 days. And then there are a bunch of the tutorial how to get started Kubernetes to develop for Java application, but also a bunch of different runtime like Node.js, Python, and etc. So I'm going to use that kind of thing here. So my namespace here, the empty project is a DOH dev. And then in order to deploy my application, what is the best practice for developer? I need to package my application like a Java or name executable. And then I need to write it down some kind of Docker file to packaging application like a Docker image. And then I push the Docker image into somewhere out there like a container registry, like a Docker Hub, Quay.io, or like a Google Container Registry or Azure Container Registry. And then I'm gonna create like a YAML file to define your Kubernetes manifest. And then you're gonna run that YAML file using kubectl into your Kubernetes cluster. And then finally, your Kubernetes worker node pull down that image and running on as pod. And also you need to generate like an ingress stuff to access your application from your local environment. So Quarkus actually solves the kind of problem in OpenShift extension, which allows developer to packaging application and containerize image and deploy to Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to add OpenShift extension here, and then back to my project, and then go to the application. Now I'm going to add like a real configuration. I'm not going to use dev service anymore. So when I'm back to my application, and I'm going to stop my demo, and then you can see you are running a container automatically stop. So the PostSQL already gone, and then now you don't have any running Docker process. You don't even need to use Docker stop or Docker kill. When you run demo, it automatically stand up the container image, and then when you stop the demo, it automatically shut it down. You don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. And then, before I deploy my application, now I'm going to go back to my project, and now I need to set it up PostSQL stuff in the production environment. So let's try to set it up PostSQL here. Now let's say the database name like a person. And then I'm gonna using the drop to create. And then, so one of the good thing is Quarkus actually allows developer maintain multiple configuration for multiple environment. For example, there are dev cluster and then production environment and pre-product or staging. How to manage that kind of stuff. Maybe you create a multi-profile or YAML file or metadata database, something like that. It sometimes occur or cause some human error. However, Quarkus provides a prefix feature to unify all configuration. So when you set it up like a dev prefix here, when you run Quarkus dev, it automatically pick that up with the dev prefix. If you don't set up any kind of prefix, it's Quarkus dev mode or packaging files, just pick it up all configuration. You can make a separate for dev environment, or you can set it up, for example, like a test or production. You can also define customer environment. So with the dev feature, you have maintained only one configuration file to manage multi-environment, which is really cool. But this configuration is for production. So I'm gonna delete it for production. So username, user, like a password, super secret, and I'm gonna need to add SQL load script here, which is the import SQL file. That's all I need to specify which database I connect to in Kubernetes. And now I'm going to add Kubernetes configuration here. I'm going to deploy this application to Kubernetes. And then deploy target, which is the OpenShift today. And then I'm gonna make a router automatically. It's just like a vanilla Kubernetes ingress Nginx stuff, but OpenShift to provide the fully qualified domain name based on HA proxy. So you don't need to worry about some domain URL to access your application pod. And I'm gonna want client trust, because the OpenShift cluster using self-certificate for TLS termination. So I'm going to make sure I can access that. And instead, drop and drop. Okay, I think this is good. All right, it's all there. And then back to the terminal. I'm going to make sure I actually log in my project using OC command line. You can use the kubectl as well. Okay, I'm here at the same namespace. And I'm going to use the same command line, Quarkus build. And in this time, it will add some more feature like after packaging application like a Java file, and then it containerize the application to container imaging. You can use the local Docker file or source to image capability, and then when you go back to my project, you can actually automatically generate Docker file here for JVM and then native image. When you click on the JVM, it uses the OpenJDK 11 or the other kind of stuff, and then it just pick it up under the target directory and the Quarkus app directory. Just pick it up the Java file to packaging and containerize image, and then expose 8080, and then this kind of whole stuff. And you go to native, and then you can find the runnable executable file, just like I showed earlier. Then back to here, you can see the OpenShift processor and starting to create a container image. In the meantime, let's go to here, and then let's try to create a database. Here to go to database, and I'm going to use the PostSQL. Here we go, and then make it bigger. And PostSQL informal, and then let's say the source name person and super secret, just like our compilation. I just create a new one. And then we just created PostSQL database in Kubernetes, which is a production. And I'm going to make it fancier because you could deploy a bunch of the pod in the same namespace. Maybe sometimes you need to add on here, IO type with post. All right, so my Quarkus application just running, and now you can see here. So data is actually created automatically here. Then James, and then here's a production profile activated. This is your production environment.
Hey, there was a question on the
Sure.
stream. What package does Quarkus provide for database non-blocking I/O?
There is I2BC.
Yeah, there's a bunch. So if you Google reactive Quarkus driver, there's a list.
So go to Quarkus, and then here is the documentation.
Under the,
To reactive.
then there's like reactive data right there, so you can find us.
This one.
Yep. There's the list right there.
Yeah, this is the how do we create like a reactive like a database stuff, like the PostSQL client. Here we actually provide that kind of thing. All right, and then back to here, and go to top page view once again. And then it automatically created like a fully appdm domain name. I just copy and then back to my terminal, and I make sure to access that like our first greeting hello and hello JJUG, and greeting is hello professor to Daniel, and the last thing is person. And that's all data. Here we go. Okay, so now I got the same. I just verify my application functionality on my local and the production. It's pretty easy because I have the continuous testing and then like a live coding capability, which is made me pretty easier to complete my application development and deploy to Kubernetes without any roadblock stuff. And now, but I'm not going to say my application Kubernetes native Java app, because when I go back to my application here, and then let's say go to like a property here, I just added the static code for my username and password here database. It's maybe some security breach, and also in my configuration, just reporting from my local file system rather than maybe some external ID configuration. So I'm going to try to make these microservices more cloud native way right now. In order to that, so Quarkus actually provide the Kubernetes client and configuration extension also. So I'm going to add Kubernetes config, and then go back to the application. So let's try to like a Kubernetes config map, enable true, and then I'm going to try the config map. Let's say the config map name like my config, and I also needed to add some kind of secret to save my data into Kubernetes secret rather than my local file system. And then here is the secret enable, true. And then the secret name like a DB credentials. Okay, so now I'm going to create the actual Kubernetes secret and config map. You can use like a OpenShift dev, like a dev console, or you could still using kubectl command line. I'm going to showcase both cases here. So let's say I'm going to use the kubectl create secret, just like a DB credential, and then here's the username user, and then super secret, just like we did. I'm just create one, and then let's go back to like try to create a new config map on my WI. Here's the config map menu. So just create the secret and then go to like a secret. You can see here DB credential just created, and you can reveal value like a super secret and user. And you go to config map, you can create a new one. Let's say so name my config, and I'm gonna need to add like my config name is going to name the James here. Okay, I just save file. So let's back to my application. So now I'm going to change it to referring to my secret with the dollar and just like a username, which is the key, my secret, username. And then here is go and password. Okay, so file, and here's one more thing. I go to resources file, and then I'm going to change that like a my config name, because when I go to the UI and the config map, and you can see here is the key is my config name, and the value is James. And then back to the application, so that's why my config name, which is I just changed that. So now this application actually use Kubernetes resources like a config map and the secret. And I'm going to give you one more interesting part here. So just imagine that. So when you deploy your application to Kubernetes sometime later, and then maybe you got some error. Maybe you are the SRE or a platform engineer or ops guy just made a phone call to you in the middle of the night, and yeah, you got some error. So you need to fix that issue right away. But you might say, oh, I totally guarantee my application to be working. That's not my problem. It's your problem. Fix that problem right away. I don't care. But that's the developer team and the ops people is the every time, every single day they are fighting each other. However, so sometimes, okay, so I need to check some application logs in the Kubernetes. However, the one beauty of the Kubernetes is just kill the pod automatically and restart it. That is one of the beauty of the Kubernetes, which means you cannot find the logs right away because your application pod is already gone. But sometimes your the centralized infrastructure, logging infrastructure, collect all logs from an application across the cluster, like a Dynatrace or 6D or some of the APM tool. It's not easy to find out relevant error log even after 2 hours later. And then you can't have any permission to access the log infrastructure right away as an ordinary developer. But if you could just replicate that error into Kubernetes cluster, I'm not saying it's a production, it's more like a pre-product, like a staging environment. Just like you could have like a live coding capability from your local to remote Kubernetes cluster. it's pretty much easier for developer to investigate your error with the keep live debugging. So in order to do that, Quarkus provides remote demo capability. So I'm going to packaging type here, because so Linux container actually provided two great features. One is immutability, the other one is portability. So whenever package container image, you can run any container environment, not only Kubernetes, but also single Docker environment. So that is, we could say immutable. You could technically change inside container. However, when you restart container, it's gone automatically. That's what we say immutability. But in order to remote to demo, like live coding, we need to make mutable, not immutable. So that's why I'm going to set up mutable jar, and then library load. Password is only some security between your local and remote Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to say anything stuff. And then also library load URL, which is here is endpoint. And then one last thing is I'm going to send environment variable, or I think it's publish it. Environment and Quarkus launch and demo true. Yeah, hopefully I don't make a typo here. Okay, so I think it's good. Okay, and then now I'm going to go back to my terminal, and then let's try to give it one more try to call the Quarkus build. And then we're going to do that one more time to build an application. And then once deploy this application, and I'm going to verify the application functionality, RESTful API is still working to access the database from the username and password from secret rather than my local, and also the one value from Kubernetes config map rather than my local file system. And then I'm going to run the Quarkus remote demo from my local to connect to my remote Kubernetes cluster, which allows me to have live coding remotely from my local to Kubernetes cluster. So that's the thing, and then hopefully I don't have any errors today. So it's almost done, so pretty fast. So packaging application and then generate a bunch of stuff. When you go back to your project and then under the target directory, so the Kubernetes directory automatically created like a bunch of the Kubernetes manifest. For example, deployment and the service. And also we're going to deploy OpenShift cluster. That's why you can find some of the manifest related to OpenShift resources like image stream, sort of the metadata of your image, and a route URL, the fully qualified domain name. That's the thing. So you can reuse the YAML file, like using kubectl if you want. And just deploy that and then back to WUI and topology view. And application starting. Okay, let's try to go to pod logs. Okay, so it access the database, and now you can see, here we go. So that activated and live coding activated, which is like your local environment. And now I'm going to back to my terminal. I'm using Maven command line Quarkus remote to that. And then it's almost the same thing like a Quarkus tab. And then, but one thing different here is you can see some logging. We're gonna try to connect to remote cluster based on that URL and connect to the remote server, and then back to here. And then I'm gonna try to HTTP. Okay. And then try to hello, make sure everything is okay. So hello, which you will be returned. This thing here, okay, which is JJUG and greeting. Now you can see it's James. It's totally defined. Okay, so referring to Kubernetes config map rather than my local file system. And now I'm gonna go try to person. And now you can see the same database. And here's the interesting part, and then go back to my application. And then let's change it, like for example, okay, I'm gonna add to new data here, my PostSQL, like a data here. So I'm gonna add, like one guy from Japan is Tokyo. I just save a file, and then back to here, and then try to copy it another new data, like ID4. And when you go to runtime environment, it's a Quarkus automatically detect which file change that like import SQL file and sending to Kubernetes automatically and the packaging stuff. And then now you can see, so new data comes up. But this is not local, it's actually in the Kubernetes cluster. Just like I change my application on my local, but it applies to the remote Kubernetes automatically, which is literally, I said, the Quarkus is remote to that. And I can retrieve all data here, and now you can see all data return like a full data field. Like here is Hiro, Tokyo, and then Jen from San Francisco, James from like Orlando, and me, myself from Boston. And then it's not only any file you can change that actually when you go to like let's say you go to like a Java file. Okay, why don't you change that like here is a JJUG, the Quarkus. And then I save file, and then I can change that actually back to the name, and then go back to property, and here's my name, like Daniel. Okay, pretty interesting. And then I try to first hello, and then it automatically detects all kind of stuff. You can see here the property file. And then Java class is here. And now you can see the hello JJUG with the Quarkus, and also greeting. And now showcase Daniel 2 rather than James. So, but I'm not gonna say you're gonna connect to like a real Kubernetes production environment. Maybe it could ruin your entire system. But this is a really still cool feature to investigate some error in a Kubernetes environment. You don't need to stand up like a mini shift or a mini queue on your local environment, but you can replicate some error in the Kubernetes cluster and then automatically the remote run coding stuff. And you can actually use the remote debug as well when you port forwarding the relevant port, like a 5,000 port default port number in Kubernetes Quarkus. So which means when you make some breakpoint in your ID tool and then invoke the RESTful API into Kubernetes, and then it automatically stop on your ID tool. So pretty much easier to figure out what problem happens in your application, specifically Java application. So that's the thing. So now I can say my microservice is more like a Kubernetes native stuff, because I just got rid of some of the local and Java stuff as much as possible, and then move it to and Kubernetes to manifest and resources. So that's the thing. You could say my application Kubernetes, but you don't need to always to use Kubernetes stuff. If you just deploy like a Quarkus application in virtual machine or even bare metal, you don't need to worry about this kind of stuff. However, James mentioned earlier, the Quarkus pretty much optimize the performance and develop productivity or the other stuff into Kubernetes cluster. So you need to think about how to make it better, your application on top of the Kubernetes, which means you need to get rid of unnecessary business logic or some of the code from your Java method and then just delegate it to Kubernetes, because Kubernetes will take care of that for you. So that's all I have today. So but there are so many bunch of stuff like some has check or the other thing, So dev service is one of the good feature, not only Kubernetes but also the bunch of stuff. And then go back to Quarkus documentation, and then Google search like a Quarkus dev services. So here we go, and then here there are many like a database, and then Kafka and Hiklo, and then business automation, and then like even like a hash couple vault to secure your actual data. In order to use, this is all kind of your whole application portfolio architecture. So I don't believe you only develop standalone application without any kind of stuff. So whenever you develop business application, you need to think about how to integrate your backend service like a messaging server or authentication like a single sign-on server or the messaging broker or in distributed cache like a Redis or Infinite Span. The other stuff you need to think about how to connect to this kind of backend server. So as long as you added a Quarkus extension and with like a maybe dependency or Gradle module, it automatically stand up the relevant container image. So pretty easy for developer to develop that kind of feature in your Java application. Okay, that's all I have today. And back to here. So one thing I just want to share, this is my YouTube channel. Yeah, feel free to subscribe and then put on some comment. Actually, I put in more than 200 video, like a tutorial Quarkus, Kubernetes, and the serverless, and the GitOps, and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, and then you can give me some inspiration as well. Yeah, then I need to learn something about Quarkus, specifically reactive programming. I'm more than happy to create some new content here. So here's the YouTube, like a Daniel 30, like a handler, the building URL, Daniel TV. That's all I have. Is there any other question in the virtual conference? No. Okay. Question. Don't be shy. Everybody's so hungry. Oh yeah.
I saw that the JAX-RS URL is in the editor. I want to know which extension of VS Code that you use.
The JAX-RS?
Yes.
So the REST EG, actually, we have two different, like a REST EG and REST EG reactive. And then, so the REST EG reactive, it allows developer to implement like a reactive application and like a RESTful API stuff. And then the REST EG without the reactive thing is a more imperative thing, like HTTP request response stuff.
I want to. 英語できる人。いいよ。じゃあ、and then he wanted to know the Xcode plugin that showed the REST URL under the annotation in the gray line.
Isn't that an IntelliJ feature? Or
IntelliJ
VS Code?
What editor do you use?
It's the Java extensions by Red Hat. Like in VS Code, there's the Java language support.
Yeah.
Could you show the screen? Okay.
So there are extension here. So that is. I think this one.
Speaking about, it's that one. Language support for Java.
Okay.
It's a little coffee cup.
Only this?
Yeah, this one, the language for Java, right? It's automatically complete your own like a Quarkus configuration and REST, like some annotation, it automatically show up. Yeah, but
Can you show the editor once again? In a
Java.
which defines grading, hello, and the points.
Like here we go.
Yeah.
Something here.
I think previously you had a URL under the annotation.
URL. This one the password.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
when you use the local develop mode.
Oh, you mean the configuration?
This one. This URL. I never.
Ah, yeah, is the feature in. I think it's okay.
I know it's an IntelliJ, but I thought that VS Code has it also.
Yeah, it's the previously show up
Yeah,
like
it
as a
disappeared.
HTTP URL automatically here. Oh yeah, that's the I think that's the VS Code feature. I think
You mean IntelliJ?
I'm using VS Code by the way. Yeah, so when I use the REST is reactive, and then it automatically pop up the endpoint URL under the path annotation.
Change it back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the VS Code.
Where is it?
I think it's yeah. So when you go to like a POM XML, and then
REST is reactive.
yeah, REST is reactive thing stuff. And then
Yes, at the bottom. At the bottom of it, yes. Oh. You have to rebuild.
I need to run the Quarkus step actually, and then once you run the Quarkus step, it automatically show up. But maybe I got some matter. Yeah, but it should pop up here, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that one.
So when you run the Quarkus step and the runtime and you're using the reactive thing, it automatically pop up.
Yes, we're running.
Yeah. Is it some combination Quarkus step and then I don't know, it's a VS Code?
How did you run it? Did you run it in your terminal? It probably detects it on 8080.
Yeah. Could detect it on 8080 and you could go to here. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you for your consideration.
sure, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, using VS Code and Quarkus, you can have this feature. Yeah, that's the right answer. Using Quarkus, VS Code, you could get this one. And the reactive, don't worry about it.
And one more question for. So can we configure the secret content automatically in development resource by Quarkus?
Secret, in the Kubernetes secret, you mean?
Maybe.
So, back to the application. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just the Kubernetes secret. So when I go to OpenShift cluster, and here is secret, DB credential, and then here is the key and value. So username is key, and the value is user. The password is key, and then value is super secret. And then I just need to only keys here. That's why he just some syntax, dollar and here, and then here is the username, password. If you set it up like a key is a user, and then pass, and then you should be changing user and pass. Yeah, that's the how do you report this secret from your application property.
Okay, he mistake there. Not secret content. That's for security context.
Yeah, you can store any secret information, but I just give some quick example, like a database username password should be secure as the common practice. So if no enterprise company allows you store your database username password in the application property of the Java project, this is some security breach. So you need to like, store name and password like, somewhere even database after encoding or encrypt. But whenever you deploy application to Kubernetes, it's the best practice using Kubernetes secret rather than using database. It reduces your performance in the end. And then because when you scale out your application from 1 pod to maybe 10,000 for the scalability, and then every time your container pod run and then try to connect to database and then retrieve the username and password, it's not good practice and pretty much slower than. And then even if sometimes you kill the pod, some kind of has problem, then you need to also keep doing the same thing to connect to database. What if your database at a time just fail? Connection issue or network issue, then your pod not gonna run. But the other all kind of stuff is still working. So that's why you need to delegate all kind of thing to Kubernetes. That is a Kubernetes orchestration. All right?
Hey, we got a question. He's asking about security context. I think it's an OpenShift feature. And can we configure it through the Quarkus?
I don't think so. We can configure security context SCC in
SCC or service account in
No,
this
yeah.
file?
No.
No?
Yeah, there is no feature around
I
that.
think
Yeah.
possibly we can configure the service account using this file. No?
No, I don't think so. So that is more like the infrastructure stuff, not the application side. Even if we can configure like the security context in the application side, why should we need to do? Because this kind of more like which application can be accessed or not in the Kubernetes.
Yeah, you can configure the service account that the Quarkus application will run as or with in the file, but you can't create a new service account as part of the Quarkus build. But you can specify which service account the Quarkus app should run as.
Maybe we can deploy additional manifest, Kubernetes manifest along with the application build.
Well, if you look at look at the OpenShift plugin, the OpenShift extension.
Yeah.
Just type in OpenShift. Yeah. And then search for service space account. Yeah, right there. So you can specify that, that's the service account that the pod will run with.
Okay,
But
we can.
this is referring to existing service
Yes.
account and not actually creating new
It
service
will not
account.
create a new
Yeah.
service account.
Yeah. So you can referring existing service account, but we not gonna allow you to create a new service account in Kubernetes,
Yeah.
which means we're not gonna generate like some YAML file, like how to create like a service account.
Yeah, but we can prepare the service account and existing SCC, and then we can
Yeah, that's
build the
possible.
Quarkus.
Yeah.
That just gets dropped into the deployment object that gets generated.
I think specifying the service account is enough for us, application developers.
All right, I think so we're done. Any other question? Okay, thanks for joining today. And then if you have more question, feel free to reach out to the Red Hat folks in the Japan office. And then you already have the Twitter handling, so you can feel free to reach out to me and James. And then my YouTube channel as well. We are more than happy to address your question in the future. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we have stickers.
Yeah.
Don't forget. Take as many as you want.
ステッカーがあるので、欲しい方は前に取りに来てください。オンラインの方は 指を加えて眺めてそこで。さて、これで、12月、今年のJJUGナイトセミナーも終わりたいと思います。なんか、事故は今回はないかな。
ないです。1
また
月のナイトセミナーお待ちください。
1月にまたナイトセミナーやりますので、そちらにもご参加ください。僕もちょっと後でステッカーもらってからでしょうか。はい、それじゃあ、今回のJJUGナイトセミナーこれで終わりたいと思います。配信の方もそろそろ停止するかな、と思いますので、また、はい、懇親会に行く人は行って、その例外の人は開催しましょう。これで終わりたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。